When it comes to investing, retirement, taxes, healthcare, and estate planning, the decisions you make today can greatly affect the quality of life for you and your loved ones tomorrow. What you need is straight and unbiased information on the most important issues you'll face when planning for your retirement and financial future. Good news, you found Premier Retirement Radio with Jeff Vogan. Jeff is the founder of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management, and he's been guiding people financially and into retirement for 30 years. So get ready for an hour of the most comprehensive financial information on the radio. Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan. And now here's Jeff Vogan and Jeff Shade.
Thanks so much. Welcome to Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about why 65 is the most dangerous number in your retirement plan. We'll also answer listener questions and finally, essential estate planning documents for your family's peace of mind. My name is Jeff Shade, and I'm just here to ask the questions, but the words of wisdom and solid advice, they come from the other Jeff. It's Jeff Vogan, founder and president of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Hey, Jeff, how you doing this weekend?
I'm doing great. It's always fun to be with you and the listeners and talk stuff.
We got a lot of stuff to talk about today, not the least of which is money stuff, Jeff. For generations, Americans have had a number drilled into their heads when it comes to retirement. That number is 65. You work until 65. You retire at 65. Why 65? Is there something financially magical about that age? Or are we building one of the biggest financial decisions of our lives around a number that may no longer make sense? So today, we're asking, is 65 actually the most dangerous number in your retirement plan? We've been conditioned, Jeff, to think that 65 equals retirement. What is wrong with that equation or that number?
Well, I think everybody's different. 65 is the time for retirement for many people just because they're looking forward to getting on Medicare, and that's probably the biggest event that starts at age 65 that isn't available earlier and isn't really, it'd be silly to wait longer. So, I mean, many people work, especially in the older ages, being 50s and 60s, older, not super older, but older as far as working years go, and love the idea that they're getting benefits. If you're in a high income, I mean, you could be paying $1,000 or even $2,000 a month for insurance if you have to do the Obama exchange. It's crazy that the subsidies that people who are making money have to pay for everybody else's insurance and get no better benefits. So for many people, it's just that few $1,000s a month savings by working for an employer where you might be able to buy a group policy for $300 or $400 a month per person or for your family instead of thousands is one incentive to keep working, just to not have that outflow, especially when you're not old enough to be really unhealthy enough to use all your insurance up. So that's a big number. I don't think it's a dangerous number. It's just kind of a goal number. Hey, if I don't want to pay for my own insurance, I need to work that long. Or if I don't have some other option where either a younger spouse is still working and I can get on theirs, then I need to wait. It used to be that the full retirement age for Social Security was 65. I think they set that up because back in the day when Social Security was set up, I think the average life expectancy was 65. So they figured they'd only have to end up paying the Social Security annuity payout to about half of the people because half would live longer than that, half would die earlier than that because that was average life expectancy. I mean, that's not true today. I mean, average life expectancy is mid to late 80s. So you're looking at plenty of people living 20 and 30 or 40 years on Social Security and on Medicare. And we've got to feed that fire because it's going to burn. I mean, it's burning taxpayer money. So we got to keep feeding it in order not to run out. And those people that paid in their whole life deserve to get it. So they have raised retirement age from 65 to full retirement age. In other words, where you get your maximum benefit on Social Security to age 67. That's only 2 years. There's so much pushback, they can't really raise it again. I think they'd be smart to raise it to 70 as long as people are still living a long time. That doesn't mean everybody has to wait to age 70 to retire. It just means you have to save and live on other sources before that if you want to retire. But if Social Security is a big part of your plan, maybe if it's the bulk of your income, you might want to wait to age 70 anyway, because that's when it maxes out. So there's a lot of important numbers, a lot of important ages. There's some that I think are even more important. 59 and a half is a big number, more important number, I think, than 65, because that's when you can actually take control of your 401k money, your IRA, and actually make plans so that whatever happens in retirement, whenever you do decide to not clock in for your job anymore and either go on Social Security or go on Medicare or do these other things, you can have years of planning, advanced planning to make sure that certain costs are covered, that you have savings to cover those medical costs and things like that beforehand. So many people just leave their 401ks alone at 59 and a half and retire, and somewhere between 59 and a half and 65, there's a market correction or market crash, then you either have to rethink retiring or working again, and you might not have those resources because who knows, the market might be recovering from a big setback. And I think we're due for one. We've been due for one for quite a while. The market can only hold off so long before the house of cards comes tumbling down. So I think as you get older, you start thinking about that number of 65 might be the number, but I think there's other numbers or other ages that you need to think about to start preparing even beforehand. There's another age, 62 is when you could start taking Social Security benefits if you want to. If you want to have an early retirement, do you take those benefits early or not? Age 70, maximum age you can elect Social Security with the maximum benefit. But remember, if you want to get the maximum benefit by waiting to age 70, you better live at least 12 years or you won't even get your money back that you didn't take out between age 62 and 70 or between 65 and 70. There's another really important age, 73, when you have to take required minimum distributions. And if you're born after 1960, that age will be 75. So there's ages in the 70s that are important. And in my opinion, the people that come into our office are more scared about this age 73 of the required minimum distribution time when the government forces you to take money out of your IRAs and other deferred accounts, retirement accounts, and pay taxes on them, whether you need the money or not. So again, you might want to actually start planning for the age 70 or 73 when you're 59 or 60 before you even have a chance to retire. So I don't think, the way you phrase that as 65 is the scariest number, is one of the scary numbers. No, it's just one of those significant numbers that you have to plan around, but you shouldn't wait to 65 to plan. You should plan long before 65. And when you hit 65, that's just the start of all kinds of new things that you have to worry about, like making your money last, like making sure your income doesn't run out, like making sure the market doesn't crash and you end up needing the money when the market's down. You end up locking in losses on your life's work. And that doesn't bode well. I mean, how are you going to make that money that you spent at a discount last for the next 30 years? It's going to be hard. So there's a lot of things that I think people need to really start planning on. Long before you're 65, you ought to start looking at your retirement plan. I think late 50s, especially 59 and a half, when you can start accessing your retirement plans where it seems like the bulk of most people's money is, the typical middle class, somewhat affluent retiree, the ones that we tend to find our niche with most, is the person that has saved a significant amount of money that is going to have taxes on that when they're not going to live a tax-free retirement because they do have assets and they do have a little bit of wealth stored up and they've been responsible with their money and they want to continue to be, but they don't want to overpay in taxes. So that person really ought to start planning, let's say, starting to see your 60th birthday around the corner. That's probably a more significant number and a more important number to get things going than say, oh, here comes 65. This is when everything starts. It should start long before that, is my point.
Jeff, the idea of 65 as a retirement age goes back well over a century. It wasn't chosen because somebody determined the human body reaches the perfect retirement age at 65. So we're basically using an old historical number to make a modern financial decision. Retirement today can essentially become a second adulthood. If someone retires at 65, lives into their 90s, we're not talking about a short final chapter. We're talking about potentially 30 years. So how do you design a retirement plan that is agile and flexible enough to change with the times if someone's going to be retired for 30 years?
That is a true point. There was a really good book. It's called Halftime. I don't remember the author, but it was, what are we going to do? Retirement is not an end game. It's not really anything but halftime. It's like, okay, you spend the first half of your adult life figuring out where you're going to work, how you're going to earn a living. Then if you're smart, you save some. And then you've got this new life where you don't have to clock into a job every day. You don't have to spend 40, 50, 60, or 70 hours a week running a business and trying to spin all the plates and raise a family and go to work and save money and prepare for this retirement. Then all of a sudden, you're not working anymore. Some people find that retirement's more busy, but that's because they have goals and they have a lot of things that they've put off to retirement and they plan to do. Some people find themselves like, oh my gosh, now what? And they have to reinvent themselves. So this is what that book was all about. It's kind of reinventing yourself for the second half of life. Who do you want to be? Do you just want to be a father who goes to work and provides? Or do you want to be, now what? You're retired. Kids are gone. You're not earning money anymore. You've got to pretty much just take care of yourself. Do you want to just sit around and spend your money till it's gone, or try to be frugal and not spend your money and do anything because you're scared it will run out or scared the market will crash? Or do you want to have some sort of a meaningful, what is your avatar of you in retirement? Is it going to be a person that serves at charities and goes to soup kitchens and does charitable work, or serves more aggressively in activities at church? I don't mean aggressively in a bad way, but I mean just more committed in activities that you can do with some of the community or church associations that you might have. Maybe it's you're finally able to spend some time and coach kids' sports, so you coach your grandkids' Little League and football teams, Pop Warner, whatever. Who do you want to be in retirement? And the fact is that retirement life, that 30 years, it's going to have a paycheck. So the whole first half of your life, you're in that accumulation phase. And if you're smart, you save money. And then you have this distribution phase. And if you don't have some peace of mind about the income that you're needing to replace, then you're going to feel like your retirement plan is bobbing up and down with the waves of the market and other things, and you're not going to really have a steady plan or even the peace of mind that I think most people want. Some people think, well, the market's always good. It grew my assets to millions of dollars by the time I retired, so I'll just leave them there. When you're taking money out, the volatility in the market does a weird thing to your money. It helps it run out faster. Volatility is not good for income plans, and some people don't really know that, or they'll say, and you mentioned the word flexibility. Some people say, well, the market's really flexible. If the market's good, I get to spend money and go on trips. If the market's bad, I got to tighten up and cut back. Do you really want to live your retirement life and base next year's expenditures on how the market did last year or how the market's going to do next year? What if it crashes 50% and takes 7 years to get back to even? Are you really going to be motivated to spend money during that period of time? What if you took half your retirement savings and you built an income stream that you knew you could pay all your bills on and even travel on and even have a budget for fun stuff, so that if the other half or the third or other portion of your money that you have at risk does crash in the next market crash, you're not using it, locking the losses, or needing to do anything with it. You can wait those 7 years out on that extra discretionary money for those, maybe the bigger, stupider, I say that in quotes, expenses, those things that really aren't necessary, like your basic travel needs, like your basic food, shelter, going to see the kids, help out, have a little budget to do some fun stuff, and live your lifestyle that you've been accustomed to. And that's what we do, is we build that Premier Retirement Roadmap that helps you see, how is my money going to last? How is it going to serve me? You've served your job and kind of served your own retirement plan your whole life. Now let it serve you. How do you do that? By building a plan that's a little bit flexible. I mean, you have to have some flexibility in it, but you also have some rigidity in it and some guaranteed income sources and things like that you can guarantee, that gives you that peace of mind or stickiness or the ability to feel comfortable about your plan, even when the markets are bad. Right now, we've seen a lot of turmoil in the markets. The market's really bobbing up and down all over the place. It's interesting that there's really no leadership in the market, yet the indexes seem to be setting some new highs. You look at the market and you see big stocks have gone up and driven the market go down 20 and 30%, sometimes 15 and 20% in the same day. And they're part of those stocks that help build your wealth. And then you say, well, how's the market going up when you've got Microsoft down 20% from last year? Now it bounced up since then and it's bouncing back. You've got Oracle down almost 50% for a while. It's starting to bounce back. You've got some of these big chip companies that make memory and things like that down 30% from their highs, yet the market continues to make a new high without those companies participating in the growth. So where is the money coming from? It's really hard to tell. So there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, do you want to base your retirement on picking the right stocks? I hope not. In our plan, we have a stock portfolio, but we only put money in there. I mean, if the market's bouncing around and we're struggling, we don't have clarity on what sectors of the market is driving the market. You either have to sit back and go in the index and hope they continually manipulate it upwards. But if you think it's overvalued, you need to have to be a little bit careful. But we also know that the markets over time are going to do great. We also know that that's not the money that you need for your monthly expenses. And I hope you're not taking that money out of those monthly expenses when the market's in as much turmoil as it is. And if you only watch the news every other day or something like that, and they say, oh, market made a new high, that's really not a reflection of what I'm seeing in the market and the fact that volumes are really low, that institutions aren't buying stock, that smart money like Warren Buffett are raising cash and sitting on the sidelines. The market is not in good shape. Even though its indexes are making new numbers, it's not a place I would want the money that I'm living on month to month to be. And it's certainly not the place that we're putting our clients' money that they're planning on living month to month on or using month to month in the markets, not just like they are today, because they're kind of weird, they're choppy, and there's no real clear direction. Even the AI stocks have been selling off. Some AI sectors are going great. Some AI sectors aren't. Some AI sectors are so overvalued and overdone and overhyped and over-leveraged with debt that they probably aren't going to work out. And when smart money sees that, they're not going to go into them. Main Street might, but eventually some of those companies, just like in the dot-com days, when the dot-coms ended up being dot-bombs, there's going to be AI bombs. We are in an AI bubble, no question. Every smart person that's ever invested knows that. You're not going to hear that on TV from Kramer and those guys that are paid to cheerlead the market, because while they're doing that, the institutions are buying cheap, or they're actually selling you stock at a higher price, hoping that when it goes down, they're able to buy cheap because that's their model. And they don't really care about your finances. So keep in mind, the institutions are playing against you. They're playing against all of us. Shoot, they're playing against me as an investment advisor. They're playing against me as a portfolio manager. We have to be very careful at how we step up to the plate and take our next swing. There's a lot of curveballs, knuckleballs, and all kinds of stuff coming at us right now. We don't want your day-to-day living money in that, even if we are doing a good job, bad job, or indifferent job with that money. Because over time, we do great. We've done well with our risk money. Risk money's been great for several years. It will probably always outperform your safe money if you look at the overall return over a period of years. but it's not the kind of money that you want to live on a regular basis. And that's why we're really happy that we have principal protected accounts that guard against those losses, that help you get that clarity of income to make sure you know your bills are paid and that make sure you know you have confidence in retirement. You're not going to run out of money if bad things happen, or if, like in the year 2000 to 2010, we call it a lost decade, 2 big market crashes. The market averaged 0 over that period of time. Man, if you had to live on your own savings and it was all invested in the market during that time, you'd probably be like the example I use very often, Norm, who ended up running out of money in 7 or 8 years. So we don't want you to be that person. We want you to build a 30-year plan that is flexible enough to have some discretionary purchases if need be, some emergency funds if need be. But the stuff you need for emergencies and income and the stuff you need to wake up every day to make sure your bills are paid is not market money. It's safe money. Fixed income or fixed expenses ought to be paid by fixed assets. Discretionary or flexible assets that you may or may not buy or may not need are those things that could be used on those things that are flexible, and the market certainly is flexible. So that's kind of how we look at the plan, is what's the money for? What's the purpose of the money? Let's make sure that you have enough to not run out by the time you're 100 or that 30 years or that second half of your life. Shoot, if you're retiring in the mid-60s, you might end up having your second half might be longer than your first half. That's a lot to ask of that nest egg you've saved to last as long as you do, when you may live longer than it took you to save that money in the first place.
We're talking with Jeff Vogan of Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management about why 65 is the most dangerous number in your retirement plan. If you would like to discuss that topic with Jeff, we're offering a no-cost, no-obligation Premier Retirement Roadmap, and you can get yours by calling 520-780-9059. And again, you can call that number today if you'd like. Leave your name and number. Shelley will call you back during the week and set up a convenient time for you to sit down with Jeff on a one-on-one basis and just have that casual conversation. So once again, if you'd like to take advantage of the opportunity, absolutely no cost, entirely complimentary. It's 520-780-9059. Make that call today. You can find out more about us online at primrat.com. Jeff, one of the reasons that people have 65 stuck in their head is because that's the age that you get Medicare. That's probably one of the biggest reasons that people delay retirement until age 65. Let's say I'm 62. I've got to bridge the gap 3 more years. Is there a viable option for people with health insurance to bridge that gap of 3 years?
Well, there isn't if you're in a high income bracket. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. And when you go on the exchange, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare exchange, it's means tested. So if you still plan to live on IRA or 401k money that's taxable, there's a 1099. The government knows you're making money. If you're taking Social Security, they know that you're making that. And so it's going to be determined on what your income is. Now, if you have enough savings outside of IRAs and things and can live on your after-tax money and not show any income for those 3 years, you can get Obamacare almost free. Now, I hate to even say that because that just means I'm paying for their health care because they're overcharging me. That's what they do. I don't like means testing. I think it's really bogus because everybody gets the same benefit and everybody has to pay a different cost for the same thing. That's like you can only afford a Toyota Celica, but you want a Ferrari, so it's okay because you can't afford it. You can have the Ferrari anyway. But the guy that can afford a Ferrari has to pay twice as much for the Ferrari because he can afford twice as much. Even though it's only a $250,000 car, he has to pay $500 for it. That doesn't make sense. You still got a Ferrari. How did they, whatever. I'm probably going off on a tangent here, but that's one of the things that you can do if you want to really play the system. The other thing that you can do, which I do personally, because we have a small enough company, we don't have access to super big, huge group healthcare. I just do bonus plans where everybody can buy their own through the exchange based on their income. Or do what I do. We have a Christian Health Network, which is a co-op. Medishare is another one, where they basically co-op the bills of everybody. I mean, it started out about $350, I think, when I first started 10 years ago or so, and now it's probably $600. That's $600 for, I think it's $680 or something like that. That's for 2 people. If I was buying it on the exchange based on income levels, I'd be over $2,000 a month. So I'm saving a lot. And the thing is with that, I can go in and negotiate a cash price with my doctors and stuff. And because of how much I'm saving in insurance, I don't even feel like sending those claims into the Medishare because all it does is just make everybody's premiums go up. And I'd like to keep the cost low and only save that for those dire expenses, the dread diseases and those things that really shouldn't come out of pocket. But for everyday health visits, physicals, things like that, maintenance plans, even a slip disc that needs a shot and some therapy, I just pay those out of pocket, but I get a better deal because I don't have to put it through an insurance company that makes you pay the deductible at full price until you paid your $12,000, and then maybe they'll pay bills down the road. So you can save money with those co-ops. Again, probably $300 or $400 a person, even in retirement. They're typically just flat fees, and they have a I think our deductible is $500 per incident or whatever, which isn't bad. They don't cover any pre-existing conditions. You have to disclose those prior, and that's fair because it is a co-op. It's not an Obamacare type plan where you have to cover those pre-existing conditions. That's why that type of insurance is so much more expensive. But, if you've got some other insurance that'll cover those pre-existing conditions, or if you think those pre-existing conditions can wait a few years before something dire needs to be taking place and you'll be on Medicare. For example, I have a bad back. I might need an operation someday, but I'm sure I can hold out a few more years. So I'm not worried about it. If I had something explode on my back or I needed surgery, I don't think the Medicare or the healthcare program that I'm on would pay for it. So I'm kind of on my own on that regard. I know that going in, but if I save $20,000 a year for 10 years on insurance premiums and all the deductibles, because I'm not paying full price at the doctor's offices, and I can negotiate better rates for cash pay at time of service, then I'm probably ahead $200,000 or $300,000 in 10 years. I can pay for my own medical treatment if it's not $1 million claim or something like that, or a heart transplant, heaven forbid. But hopefully by the time I need anything like that, I'll be on Medicare. I've already paid into that my whole lifetime. And some people say, that's not an entitlement. Well, I feel very entitled to getting my money back and my healthcare back. And the other thing is that it's also means tested, because in retirement, if you make a certain amount of money, you still have to pay extra for all those Medicare benefits that you already paid for. But it is what it is. You can't really get out of it. It's mandatory. There wasn't so much Medicare fraud and games being played with it. I'd be probably a little bit more excited about it. But bottom line is you do pay a little bit for that, but it is there for you. And there aren't any upside limits as long as you jump through the hoops that it takes to get on that Medicare. But between now and then, there's options. And if you're in your healthy years, you're probably not going to need them anyway. So I would go with one of those inexpensive co-op plans if it were me.
So, Jeff, retirement readiness really isn't about an age. It's more about an account balance, would you say?
Well, I'd say even more than that. It's more about the plan. How are you going to use the account balance? Some people have plenty of account balance. What is your spending habits? Yeah, I talked to somebody this week that, has $7 or $8 million and they can live on $10,000 a month. They don't have any bills. They're happy that way. I mean, shoot, that guy's just got a never-ending tax problem, right? So what do you do in that case? That number's big enough to not worry about. He could probably take all the risk he wants, yet he's still interested in not paying all of it in taxes, giving the kids as much tax-free benefit as possible, make it as efficient as possible. But it's really about the tax play because so much of it's deferred. So it's really, what is the plan where you end up getting to keep or control most of that throughout the lifetime? They have plenty. Now, there's other people that say, well, I have a $10,000 a year lifestyle, and I have about $1.2 million in savings. I get $38,000 between us on Social Security. So we need to make up an extra, $6,000 spendable, maybe $7,000 a month gross off of this $1.2 million. Well, if that's reasonable, guess what? On $1.2 million, you could probably do it. But you can't put it all in the market because the safe withdrawal rate, just based on volatility and things like that, the market would say, the Wall Street would say, the rule is less than 4%. So 4% on that, there's $48,000, there's $4,000. You're going to be about $3,000 or $4,000 a month short on what you hope to use. However, if you incorporate some index annuities with income riders or even alert plan where you get tax-free income and maybe can keep some more of that money in taxes, not go into a 22% tax bracket, stay in the 12% tax bracket, by planning correctly, that number could actually be $10,000 spendable a month if you plan right and you don't risk your retirement income on something you can't control that has volatility like the stock market. So, it's really about the plan. Now, it's also about the number. Somebody wants to retire at 65. They've only got $400,000 in assets and they want to live on $10,000 a month. I mean, that's not realistic. That number will get you might last 7 or 8 years and then you'll be out of money. What are you going to do then? You have a rich kid with a big house, or do you have a shortened life expectancy because you have bad health and you're probably not going to make that long anyway? Some people make bets like that, but I prefer not to make bets like that. By the time you think you're going to die, they probably found something that'll cure you or make you live longer than you wish you had money left. So, you've got to have a plan that coordinates what you have. And if you have an abundance and you have extra, what do you do with the extra? Do you let it cause you a big tax problem and end up being estate tax when you die and end up being really inefficient and just giving a chunk to the government? Or can you at least be a good steward of that even if you don't use it? If you don't have enough to make ends meet because the rules of thumb don't get quite there, then look at other tools. You can't build a house with just a hammer. I don't know how you can build a financial house with just a stock portfolio.
Very good conversation, Jeff. I think the takeaway is don't retire because the calendar says that you should. Retire because your plan says you can. So before you turn off the paycheck, make sure you've answered one of the biggest questions of your financial life. Not am I 65, but am I ready? Jeff Vogan and the team here at Premier Retirement and Wealth Planning can sit down with you and provide a complimentary retirement review designed to help you see where you stand and whether your retirement date actually fits your financial plan. To get yours at no cost and no obligation, call 520-780-9059. 520-780-9059. You can make that call today if you want. Leave your name and telephone number. Shelley will return the call during the week and find a convenient time for you and Jeff to sit down and have that conversation. 520-780-9059. We're also online at premret.com. Jeff, let's take a break. When we come back, we've got listener questions, and later on today, essential estate planning documents for your family's peace of mind when our program continues here on 790 KNST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
You can't start a trip you've never taken without a plan, and you can't start your retirement journey without a comprehensive plan to get there safely. To request your no-cost Premier Retirement Roadmap, call 580-780-9059 or request it online at premret.com. Now back to more Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan and Jeff Shade.
We appreciate you joining us here on this August weekend for Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan. My name's Jeff Shade. We're here for you each and every week for your fiscal fitness and your financial education. Saturdays at 7 a.m., 9 a.m., and 1 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. And if those times are not convenient for you, we're also a podcast. Go to wherever you get your podcast, search for Premier Retirement with Jeff Vogan. You'll find this show and all of our past shows so you can stay on top of your journey towards a confident retirement. Our phone number is 520-780-9059. Listening to the program today, you hear anything that piques your interest, you'd like to further this conversation with Jeff, call that number, 520-780-9059. Entirely complimentary. It's not going to cost you anything for this casual conversation. And again, you can call today, leave your number. Shelley will call you back and find a good time for you two to meet. We're also online at premret.com. Okay, Jeff, time for listener questions. Raymond is in Rancho Vistoso, and Raymond says, I'm 63, retired, and have $1.2 million in a traditional 401k. I'm a retired CPA, and I don't think my tax bracket will change much in the future. My financial advisor is pushing me to do Roth conversions, but my gut says to skip them. Who is right, me or my financial advisor?
Well, I don't know. If there's some proof behind the numbers, believe it, but trust, but verify. If you've trusted the financial advisor, he's probably giving you his best idea. But I would say tax bracket is not going to change, then it really doesn't matter about doing Roth conversions. The only reason you do a Roth conversion is you want to pay less taxes at a lower bracket, preferably on less money. So if you're in a lower bracket now than you will be in the future, and I think the consensus just about anywhere, and you're a CPA, maybe you've got your own opinions, but my opinion is I don't see how we get out of this debt mess without government eventually raising taxes, or at least having the Trump tax brackets go away. I think if you can convert a Roth at 22% and save 24% or 25% in taxes on that same money, I think you're well ahead. If you can pay taxes even at 22% instead of 25% later, you're well ahead. If you can pay taxes at 12% instead of 15%, if the tax brackets, again, go back to where they were before, then you're 3% ahead, and that 3% makes a difference. And by the way, we think assets are going to probably grow over time. Here's the only reason I would be skeptical about moving into a Roth IRA this year is because the market is extremely high. We're kind of due for a correction, and it might be really smart to do that Roth conversion when the market corrects, especially if you're in the same tax bracket as you were, when it crashes as you are now. And even if you pull it out later, it's just nice to do the conversion. If you think you might get a lower tax bracket later, or at least the same tax bracket later, but convert when the market's low, pay less taxes on less money that way. But given the long-term returns and the same tax bracket, you're going to be equally after tax when that time comes. Here's the difference though. When you do a Roth and you can systematically convert over time, like over maybe a 5-year period of time, keep yourself, let's say in the 22% bracket or the 24% tax bracket, and convert that Roth money, you've got access to as much of that Roth money as you want. Now, who's to say that down the road, something comes up, you want to help a kid buy a house, or you want to buy a motorhome, or that would be a silly expense, in my opinion, not a great investment, but if you want to do it and you can afford it, do it. But let's just say, hey, I want to pull $400,000 out of my IRA because, I never did the Roth conversion because I didn't want to pay taxes. Well, now guess what? That $400,000 withdrawal is not only going to cost you a lot more in taxes, probably the 35, 40% bracket. And then the other thing is your IRMA is going to go way up, extreme levels. That's the Medicare premium that you pay for Part B, gets withheld out of your Social Security. And you're going to pay more for that for a couple of years, way more for that than a couple of years. So what if you could stay in the same 1 or 2 tier IRMA level while you did the conversion, save as much money there, pay taxes at 22% instead of paying tax at 35 or 40 later because you needed a bigger chunk. So it gives you, I think the Roth conversion gives you a lot more flexibility with those withdrawals when you take them or when you want them, because they're not going to throw you into a new tax bracket and cause you grief and pain in so many other ways. So I think from that standpoint, I would have to side with the advisor that, if you're in the same tax bracket, just do it. Do it systematically, though. Don't do it all at once this year because you're at a high point. If you moved $1 million, in a Roth IRA and went to a 40% bracket to move it, that would be silly. But if you could do it over time in your present tax bracket, you would have more access to a different amount of dollars down the road. The other thing is the Roth IRA doesn't require required minimum distribution. So you might be able to structure those Roth conversions to a point where you're not into an ever increasing tax bracket. As you know, your CPA, if you did tax returns, you know how that works, is that every year the required minimum distribution gets bigger, a higher percentage. And if it's a higher percentage payout based on your life expectancy and the account happens to grow, then you're going to be forever forced into a higher and higher income bracket. And it may actually force you into a higher and higher tax bracket. So I would do a more forward-looking plan that shows you what your tax will be every year. And most financial advisors don't do that. We do. We want to plan your tax returns right now for the next 30 plus years. Some people say, well, we'll just have to see how it goes. As well, we'll do the Roth IRA, then you have to worry about it. But that's one way to control at least this year's tax returns. But we can show you exactly how much money those Roth conversions will save you or cost you, given a variety of different circumstances. Once we design our roadmap spreadsheet for you, we can do what if scenarios. What if I spend this? What if I want to pull this much money out? What happens? What's my tax bill if I do this? How much tax burden do I leave my kids if I don't spend it? How much are my RMDs going to be when I'm 90, when I'm probably not traveling and needing the money? Am I going to be in a new high tax bracket, if I live too long, just because I'm trying to not pay taxes now on a Roth conversion? So again, I would say, based on what I know, which is not everything about your financial plan or even your finances, I don't even know how much is in your Roth IRA. You might have 200,000, you might have $20 million. I mean, that's a big difference in how you plan for those. You talk about some seriously advanced estate planning techniques if you've got millions rather than hundreds of thousands in that type of a conversion program. So see your whole picture. There's ways math will tell us what's optimum, and we can throw various assumptions in there, but I really don't think your tax bracket's going to go down if you're already retired. It typically doesn't. It typically only goes up with RMDs, and with the government changing the tax brackets, I think you may be better off following the advice of your advisor.
Raymond, good question. Thanks for listening to us in Rancho Vistoso. And again, if you'd like to further this conversation with Jeff, our number 520-780-9059. Jeff, next question is Walter in Pima Canyon. Walter says, I would appreciate some input on whether it makes sense to pay off our mortgage. My wife and I are both retired. We have approximately $2.3 million in savings and investments, with about 90% invested in equities. I'm 65, she's 58. Our home is worth $1.3 million, and we still owe approximately $300,000 in the mortgage. The interest rate is a fixed 2.9%, and our monthly payment for property taxes, insurance, and HOA dues are about $1,300 a month. Right now, we're withdrawing about $100,000 a year from our investments. Should we dip into our $2.3 million investments to pay off our 2.9% $300,000 mortgage?
The only time I would ever do that is if you're going to make less than 2.9% on your money. I know some people just like the old Dave Ramsey's theory and your grandpa's theory of, own a home outright, don't have a mortgage. Well, when mortgages were 10%, that was a good idea. When mortgages are 5.5% or 6%, that's probably a good idea. When they're 2.9%, no way. I have mortgages on almost all my properties for a reason, because I can make more than 3% on all my money, and all my mortgages are less than 3%. I'm basically making money on money I'm borrowing. I mean, if I paid them off, I wouldn't have that money in play. You'd have less money. And the other thing is I'd like to know where that money is sitting. I mean, is it in IRAs? Are those investments in IRAs? And so you're pulling that $100,000 a year paying taxes on it. I mean, if you had to pull that out of an IRA, you'd have to pull at least $400,000, maybe even $450,000 or $500,000 out of the IRA, pay taxes on it, and then pay off that mortgage. But if you got money sitting around in the bank making 2% in a high yield savings account, maybe in that case, you do pay off your mortgage. My other idea is if you got 90% invested in equities, that means based on those numbers, you don't have $300,000 laying in cash in the bank. You probably got them all in stocks. I think based on even the 4% you roll, you're probably going to be okay with the 2.3 million, mostly in stocks. So you're probably going to have a rock and roller coaster ride coming up in the next few years with whatever happens with the market. You might rethink how many 90% in equities, I think, is a lot for somebody getting ready to retire just because of the volatility. But if you've got the stomach for it and you've got other guaranteed income, that's great. Maybe the 100 is just more discretionary. And if you had to take 100 out, and if it is an IRA money and the market goes down, you have to take less out anyway. Maybe it's not as burdensome. So again, look at your overall picture. I don't necessarily think you're doing anything wrong, but I think you'd be foolish, if you've had a reasonably good rate of return on your investments and you think you can still at least even put them in a safe place and make 3 or 4%, then I wouldn't pay down that mortgage at all.
Walter, that's a very good question, and we appreciate you listening to us in Pima Canyon. And again, the number to continue this conversation with Jeff is 520-780-9059, 520-780-9059. You can make the call right now if you want. Leave your name and number, and Shelley will call you back and set up a good time for you to sit down and have this conversation with Jeff. Very good questions today, Jeff. I'm really impressed at the intelligence of our listeners. Proof in point, here's Jessica, who is listening to us in El Encanto. And Jessica says, "Hi, Jeff. I have some after-tax money sitting in a traditional IRA. Some of it came from a Roth contribution I had to recharacterize because my income was too high, and some was money I intended to convert through a backdoor Roth, but the conversion never happened. Can I still use that existing after-tax IRA money for a backdoor Roth conversion now or in a future year? And since the account has earned money, can I convert just my original after-tax contributions tax-free, or do the IRS pro-rata rules come into play?"
Well, the pro-rata rules, that's the thing. There's always a percentage of that money that, you could do the amount you put in as the non-deductible IRA part and move that amount over, but there would still be the earnings left in there that you'd have to keep track of. The math on that and the accounting is a nightmare. And if you ever do a backdoor Roth, you should convert immediately so there are no gains when you do it. You don't have to do the math. It is a pain in the butt. You have to go back and see what that particular portion own. Now, if it's spread out evenly over the same investments and you don't have them segregated out differently, it's kind of easy to see. You just say, what was it worth? What was a proportion of what I put in at that time? What is it worth now? This is the proportion I can move out, and that would be tax-free because the gains on that money of that non-deductible IRA portion are also tax-free. And most companies already have the accounting on that, so they would know what the numbers are if you are still with the same company that you did the contribution with. If you've moved the company, then you've got to go back and figure that all out. Sometimes your advisor has to do that. We've had to do that for clients that had the same problem. They weren't supposed to do a Roth contribution, and they did anyway, and had to go back and figure out the exact math. As an advisor, we just signed off and said, yeah, these are the numbers. We checked them out, and Fidelity just said, okay. But depending on who the broker dealer is and how much accounting they want, it might be a little bit more difficult. But yes, you can do that after the fact. You don't have to do the Roth conversion exactly at the time of the rollover, and the backdoor Roth doesn't have to happen immediately. It's just better that if it does, it's better. But yeah, you've got a pro-rata situation here, and you need to pull that money out. The pro-rata is going to apply on the amount that you pull out. That's an accounting nightmare. It is kind of a pain in the butt, but yeah, good luck with that. I'm glad you didn't do that to me.
Jessica, that's a good question. We appreciate you listening to us in El Encanto. And again, if you'd like to further the conversation with Jeff, the number is 520-780-9059, 520-780-9059. Same goes for anybody listening to us today. If you've got a question you'd like us to answer on the air, you can get it to us by calling it in to Shelley at 520-780-9059. You can also go out to the website, which is premret.com, and leave it in the contact page there, and we would be happy to answer your question on the air. Same goes if you would like to talk with Jeff about your journey towards a confident retirement. Our Premier Retirement Roadmap is being offered at no cost and no obligation today, 520-780-9059. And again, it is just a casual conversation. Jeff, I want to talk about the essential estate planning documents that your family needs for peace of mind. When people hear the word estate planning, I think many immediately picture someone with $20 or $30 million, multiple homes, businesses, and a complicated family trust. But here's the reality. If you own anything, a house, a bank account, retirement accounts, investment, a car, you have an estate. So, Jeff, let's start with a big misconception here. When someone listening says, I've got a house, I got a 401k, an IRA, a little bit of money in the bank, I'm certainly not wealthy. Why do I need an estate plan versus just a will?
Well, a will is a probate document. A will just basically is a court document that says how you want your stuff to go, and lawyers are happy to help you at a big fee. And when you're dead, they usually charge more than when you're alive. So that's kind of interesting and kind of hard for the heirs to negotiate that unless they shop it around. But Usually the person that writes your will is kind of waiting for that payday and, hoping that it comes in eventually while they're still working. And it's a great retirement plan for lawyers to write wills. I actually learned that in a business law class. They said that's the best retirement plan you can do if you're a lawyer. I'm not trying to dog on lawyers, but you think about it. If you do those during your whole practice, by the time you're ready to retire, you've got all these people dying and you get to do the probates and handle that. Now, there's some people that need probate, that you need to, have a court battle in order to decide who gets what because they all want to fight. At least there's a court system to do that. But a will is really meant for court, and a will needs to be probated. Now, sometimes it can be a simple process, but generally speaking, it's cumbersome. So an estate plan that doesn't require probate, I think is better, unless you really want probate because you have family problems that kind of require legal referees. I would prefer to have legal referees just be fiduciary trustees that you pick, that people you trust, possibly beneficiaries of your estate, maybe your kids. Maybe you don't have problems. Maybe you have all your kids get along and you trust them all. If that's the case, just do a trust, leave everything to the trust, and all your stuff just gets new owners immediately on death. You can also put beneficiary designations on all your assets. You can put on a bank, you can put POD, pay on death, to a trust, or pay on death to each of my kids. You can put beneficiaries on your IRAs, life insurance, annuities. You could put ITF or POD, pay on death, designations on brokerage accounts outside of IRAs and qualified accounts. So everything that is out there, including Arizona properties, actually can have beneficiary designations on them, which escapes the whole idea of estate planning and probate, because as long as it has a beneficiary list and that beneficiary can make a claim, then it's direct succession without probate. So you don't necessarily need a will. You could do it, or need a trust. You could do it without it. We do trusts, and we always add a will just in case there's some sort of a reason somebody has to go to court. All that will says is, hey, my intention is to do whatever my trust says, so have my trustee take care of it. And it's typically a much simpler will or probate process if you have that combination. If it somehow it ever got dragged into a court situation or a probate situation, or even a civil suit if somebody wasn't a very good fiduciary trustee and somebody want to sue them. But typically, trusts stay out of courts. It's hard to sue a trust. Most people don't. You give the duties to pass out your stuff to who you want, how you want, when you want, with no taxes, no probate, if possible, at least amount of taxes, at least amount of escaping probate. And if you set it up right, it'll go smooth. And I can't believe how smooth it is to move assets. We've helped a lot of people do that over the years. I probably set up 1,500 or more trusts with people, with the lawyers that I've worked with the doc preparers that work for the lawyers that I now use after hours so we can save our clients money on those kind of documents. But we've done a lot of documents. We've seen them go from start to finish. And I'll tell you what, having a good estate plan, not a will, but having a trust or having beneficiary designations clearly listed on every asset you own makes the transition so easy. You can come into our office and we can help you and just spend a few hours on it and send you on your merry way with the inheritance. That's how easy it can be if you set it up right. If you don't, you might be waiting years just for your court date. Everything's billed hourly in the legal system, so you've got to wait your time and probably pay your fees based on how many hours somebody takes to finally do something. So you have to be careful about that. Again, lawyers do a good job, but they've got full plates. They're not cheap. They know a lot of stuff that you don't, so you got to pay them. It's worth it. But if you don't have to do that route, I would prefer it. And for our clients, I don't think anybody really wants to go that route. They prefer to circumvent all the trouble, all the time, all the taxes, probate fees, court fees, fights in public, and public knowledge of all your assets, because probate is a public event. So an estate plan is important. And not just that, but what is your legacy going to be? How do you want it to go? I mean, do you want to include some charities? Do you want some of your assets to be set aside for scholarship programs for grandkids, or a sports team, Special Olympics, or something like that? You still can speak for your money after you're dead if you have the right plan. Otherwise, it just goes to whoever and your job is done. Maybe that's okay. I mean, after all, you're going to be dead. But do you care? What legacy do you want to leave? After you're in the grave, do you care to see what happens to your money and how it's used and how it's spent, how it benefits somebody other than you? Most people do.
Okay, Jeff, so a will or a trust, those are important documents. But what about a power of attorney? I'm talking about financial and health care. Who should have that, and what's that all about?
Well, in our estate planning portfolio, I mentioned trusts and wills. I mean, we do include a trust and a will in an estate planning portfolio. We hope you don't have to use the will. Like I said, it's a probate document. The trust dictates who's in charge of your stuff, what your powers are, basically to live your life how you are living now, only you do it with the trust in mind, either owning your assets or being a recipient of those assets when you die. Problem is, what happens between now and the time you might get sick and before you die? I mean, the trust will and the will really only speak on death. What happens? We call it living probate. What happens when you're just unable to make decisions for yourself? We have a lot of clients that are taking care of parents and mothers, or some clients that are now being taken care of by their children via powers of attorney. Powers of attorney can be really structured. Mostly there's just two. One is for a durable power of attorney, which basically allows a child or a trustee or somebody that you have put on your estate plan to step in and be in charge as soon as you're not able to function as such. So the power of attorney says, hey, it's okay if this person becomes my trustee and can handle my financial matters, pay my bills, make decisions. And then what about healthcare decisions? Well, there's a healthcare power of attorney. It's HIPAA compliant, meaning that you're now, because you've been released of liability of knowing about mom's medical condition, you can now take care of her medical bills, and the doctors can freely discuss the situations with you. And then you can make the decision on whether to operate, medicate, pull the plug, let go, food hydration upon final hours and days. All those different things that, somebody would probably want to make for themselves. If they put you in charge, they would probably know that you would understand their values and probably their wishes. And I'm sure they've talked to you about them. My mom's already told me about what hers are. Before she was old enough to be having a stroke, she actually was on life support. And we ended up telling the docs to keep her alive a little bit longer, see if she could come back. They didn't give her any hope. They basically left her dead on a machine, but she did recover, and she's alive 35 years later. So she thanks me to this day, but she does say now that she's in her mid-80s, actually going to be late 80s coming up soon, that it's okay. Next time, if they tell you she's going to die, it's okay. So, we know her wishes. We're on her powers of attorney. I was then. I wasn't sure what the deal was. I had to kind of wing it on my own. But this time now, my mom's explained her wishes to me, and I know. So again, hopefully that person that's on your powers of attorney is close to you, knows you, will genuinely look out for your best benefit, be a true fiduciary, not just a trusted friend or relative or child, but somebody that you can truly believe would look out for your best interest in all cases, financially or medically.
Jeff, we can't avoid this question anymore. I can go online today, use software, or even ask AI to produce estate planning language. Why not save the money and do everything myself?
Well, you can. If you ask the AI the right questions, you could probably get a pretty good document done. It's probably going to cost you, I don't know if ChatGPT will just download one for you, but it's probably better than not having one at all. Interestingly, with AI coming up, and it is a competitive issue, the doc preparer that I use that works for an attorney by day and works for me at night and does our legal work for all of our estate planning, well, not all of it, but most of it, the simple stuff, is, she actually keeps raising her prices. I'm thinking she has more competition with AI. So, and over time that just happens, but still a lot less than an attorney. The thing is, we know the questions to ask. We know what to address in the trust document. There's a lot of generic things that might get you out of probate, but it might not speak to the different powers and rules and things that you want to happen to each of your children, the distribution, the conditions on those distributions, what happens on disability, what happens to your trust if you're married and one of you dies. Does it become two trusts? Do you have a remainder trust? Do you have a credit shelter trust? Do you even know to ask that? If you just say, hey, build me a trust, you probably get a $200 trust and that'll be all it's worth. If you build a trust with a lawyer, you're going to pay $4,000 for it sometimes, and maybe you get $1,000 or $2,000 worth of work that you could have probably studied and spent more time on and got it done. But, you could also get it done for about half that if you use people that are more doc preparers and don't go through all the legal questions and hoopla of dealing with the lawyer's office. So there's ways to save a little bit of money and still get a good consultation. I'm a certified estate planner. I don't write trusts. Like I said, I use the girl that writes them for the attorney. That way you don't have to spend money sitting in an attorney's office. I know how to guide somebody through the questions on what to ask, because after 40 years in this business, I know what happens to people's assets when someone dies. We've already been through it so many times. We know what questions to address and help you set up the trust. And if doing it right is worth a little bit of your time, and it certainly is worth a little bit of our time, then there is a price to pay for some of that time. So you decide. There's cheap ways to do it, but sometimes you get what you pay for, and you get some of those things that you could have had added for $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500 more than a do-it-yourself program. Wouldn't it be worth $1,000 of peace of mind knowing that you had the questions right and you had somebody to call if you had a question, or somebody to update it if you needed some updates, not to have to just ask some AI program and hope they get it right.
Once again, Jeff, if our listeners have questions, 520-780-9059 is our telephone number. Estate planning isn't necessarily about how much money you have. It's about how much control you want to have. If you're not sure whether your estate plan and your retirement plan are actually working together, Jeff and the team here at Premier Retirement and Wealth Planning can help you take a look at the financial side of that picture as part of your complimentary Premier Retirement Review. So call 520-780-9059 to get yours. It's 520-780-9059, because the question isn't simply, what happens to my money when I'm gone? The better question is, if something happens to me, what happens next? And have I made it easier for the people that I love to handle it? Once again, that number 520-780-9059. It's 520-780-9059. And of course, we're also online at premret.com, PREMRET.com. Jeff, out of time for this week. I'm going to thank you for your time, but as I do every week, I'm going to thank our great listeners here in the Tucson area for joining us. So for Jeff Vogan, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you next week right here with another edition of Premier Retirement on 790 KST, Tucson's most stimulating talk.
Investment advisory services provided through Premier Wealth Advisors, LLC, an Arizona state registered investment advisor. Securities transactions are placed through TD Ameritrade. Insurance and annuity products are offered through Premier Advantage Inc., DBA Premier Retirement Planning and Wealth Management. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any reference to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the insurance carrier. The show is intended for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as advice or recommendations. Due to show format, accuracy, and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Premier Retirement and its representatives do not provide legal or tax advice and may only conduct business with residents of states and jurisdictions where they're properly registered.